This type of stuff, it permeates the entire society. You know, it's not anything new.
The 13th Amendment of this U.S. Constitution provides for slavery behind the walls.
And so you see people doing really long terms in the SHU solely based on their political affiliation and the type of materials that they like to read.
We have to get rid of solitary confinement, period.
When I went to juvenile hall, I was in a room by myself for 2 weeks straight. Might not seem like a long time compared to years, but to me, it was the worst thing that I ever went through. I didn't get to take a shower for 2 weeks. I mean, just constantly, and you know, even while I was menstruating, I didn't get to have a shower. When I was locked up, this girl hung herself. I didn't know she hung herself. All I heard was like screaming before it happened, and they were dragging her down the hallway. And next thing I know, she hung herself. And she was in the same hallway as I was for 2 weeks by herself. That could have been me.
50% of suicides in any state prison system, actually in California it's 60%, happen among the 4 or 6% of the population that are in solitary confinement. So there's something about solitary confinement that causes despair and suicide. The prisoners at Pelican Bay SHU struck. They had a hunger strike over the summer. I think they had a tremendous victory. You don't see their victory in the concessions the state made. The state basically didn't give much in the way of remedy to the problems at the SHU. That's not where the victory was. The victory was that the prisoners stood together. They stood together across racial and gang lines. They were not broken by some very repressive, a lot of them were put in extra isolation and deprivation during the strike. And they were given tickets for striking, and the state said, we're not going to negotiate with you. And they stood strong, they stood together, and they broke the CDCR. So what's happened is the CDCR has to give something. And what's really important is that we all follow what it is the CDCR is going to do. What's going to happen in California, we're going to have lawsuits, and the lawsuits are going to be about all the guys up in the prison. Now, the lawsuits are going to have a special problem. It's very easy to go into a SHU and identify people who are suffering from severe mental illness, who are either suicidal or psychotic, or their condition just gets worse, they have post-traumatic stress disorder. That's easy to do for a psychiatrist. Now, what happens about the rest of the prisoners? They're also having a lot of pain and suffering, and it's those prisoners who struck. They're already together enough that they've lasted 20 years in that solitary situation. Now we have to say that the solitary has caused damage, and I think we're going to prevail. But actually, lawsuits get us very little. What really gets us something is bringing to public attention the awful torture and abuse that's going on, having people say we won't tolerate this, and making it a public discussion.
My name is Kelly Turner. I did do 13 years under California 3 strikes law for the crime of forgery before UC Hastings' very own Professor Roy Bartlett was able to win my freedom on an appeal. I attempted suicide while I was in solitary confinement. I took over 3,200 milligrams or grams, I don't know what you would actually call it, of Trivil, because it just became too much for me. I didn't want to be there anymore. And luckily, at count time, you know, you have to respond, you have to move. They banged on the door, and I wasn't responsive, and so they came in, rushed me, pumped my stomach, and thank God I'm still here today. The rallies that you're going to have are very needed. I can tell you, as being a former third striker, and I shouldn't have been out until 2021, but it was the rallying. It was a rallying that my loved ones did that got me home.
So why am I speaking on women in solitary confinement? It's a good question, right? Because most of the time women speaking on women issues. And it's time that men step up to the plate.
Yes.
And speak up on women, not only in solitary confinement, but throughout the world that have been oppressed. And briefly, I just came across an article that a comrade Diana Block sent me on the Amnesty International community paid a visit in the SHU here. At that time, it was the only woman's SHU prison here in California back in 1999. And I had to have this information because it's hard to find information around these women and doing any type of incarceration, let alone in the SHU. But something that stood out was that the male guards, the male staff, have unrestricted access to looking at women while they're taking a shower, while they're getting dressed. Before they go to yards, they're getting strip searched. When they come back from yards, they're getting strip searched. It's so bad that some women would rather stay inside and not go to the yard to be able to not have to lose their dignity and preserve whatever little dignity they have left. And it's important for us to incorporate in our analysis and wherever we're speaking that when we talk about men being in cages, it's true. A lot of our men are being, we're politically engaged, politically active, we're being tortured, but we cannot forget our women.
My son and I have been writing up, petitions for him to get out, to have his conviction overturned. Kerry Baxter Sr., my son, was sentenced to 66 years in prison in December of 2003. Shortly afterwards, he was transferred to High Desert State Prison in Susanville, California. Kerry adjusted to prison life until one day when the guards rushed the cell of him and his cellmate and dragged Kerry out. To this day, he's not quite sure why he was subjected to this treatment. He said that the guards may have been upset because he filed a grievance about them moving him to another yard. He was put in what is called administrative segregation and remained there for several weeks. We were not informed of where Kerry was until almost 2 months later. After they had more or less left him alone, he told me that at any time the guards can put prisoners in administrative segregation. That is the reality of the situation in the California state prisons. He said that he supports the SHU prisoners who are living in hellish conditions. The guards could care less, and there is no one who gives a damn overseeing the situation. We must take our case to a higher authority, such as the UN, or whoever's out there, and ask for help for our fellow human beings.
If you get validated as a member of a prison gang or an associate of a prison gang, you get sent to the SHU, the Supermax unit, for an indefinite term. Recently, based on the work that was happening with the hunger strikes, the Department of Corrections is now revisiting their gang management policy, and they've released a draft of it, which is available on their website, and I encourage people to read it. One of the benefits of the new policy is that they're going to review everyone's SHU terms. So all the people that are currently in SHU that have done years and years and years there will have their cases reviewed. Hopefully this will be meaningful review, but we're not sure of that yet. One of the things that was recommended to the Department of Corrections by the experts that they hired to help them come up with a new policy was that there's a real need for independent review of gang validations and of people's placement in the SHU, because for the past 30 years it's been solely under the control of this small unit of gang investigators who really have the culture of not wanting people to come out. It's where they put people that pose problems to them, that write a lot of appeals, that file grievances against what happens to them in the prison, and refuse to be silent about the type of treatment that they're receiving. The Department of Corrections pretty much adopted the policy based on the recommendations from the experts that helped them write the report, but they left out that important recommendation that there be independent review. So that's something that we're trying to get right now. We want somebody from outside the Department of Corrections to actually go in and look at what people are being validated for, how long they're spending in there, and whether or not they're actually being confined because they're a threat to the security of the institution. Most of the time they're not. Most of these people have not even been accused of any actual gang activity. Even though the courts and the Department of Corrections' own regulations require that they find that someone has engaged in actual gang activity before they isolate them for a long time, that's not what's going on here. And some of them are being validated for having newsletters that like prisoner rights organizations send out. Some of them are being validated for writing something in Swahili or putting the word comrade in their letters.
I'm going to say a few things, and I'm taking them from her article. So Professor Bell begins with the purpose of incarceration, and that's to turn rule breakers into rule followers. The prison system thrives on order and discipline. Solitary confinement is a tool the prisons use to promote that order and discipline. Professor Bell believes that this tool is being used without a real check on that power. The article makes three major points. First, that prisoners' substantive due process rights to meaningful review of their continuing confinement is being ignored. Second, that the solitary confinement review process, as it is currently constituted, violates the spirit and the purpose of separation of powers. The prison system is a part of the executive branch, and it is this structure that is deciding whether prisoners' rights, constitutional rights, are being respected. Third, that the courts have taken a stance of judicial abstinence and willful blindness as to the real deprivations of justice and constitutional rights by allowing the solitary confinement review process to continue as it is currently constituted.
Leonard Peltier is an indigenous warrior. He's transcended to become a symbol of indigenous resistance, a symbol of these crimes against natives that have been committed for over 500 years. Usually one constitutional violation could be enough to free someone. In this case, there's over 19, and he's still not free. He's been in solitary confinement since earlier this year. On bogus charges, his supporters sent him from Scotland, sent him some money, and usually all of his mail is screened by the government, by the FBI, so somehow they let money get to him, he turned it in, and they put him in solitary confinement, and they haven't let him out. So we're doing everything we can to raise awareness about his case. In 2010, I released the Free Peltier album, Hip Hop's Contribution, and it got artists like Immortal Technique and Talib Kweli to come out and record songs, which all the proceeds go directly to Leonard Peltier's Defense Offense Committee based out of the main headquarters based out of North Dakota. And I just released a documentary on Leonard Peltier's case. It's called Free Leonard Peltier, Free 'Em All.
In 2001, the death penalty was first quote-unquote overturned. And for 10 years, the Philadelphia District Attorney tried to appeal that ruling. And for those 10 years, they made a special request with the judge and with the prisons that he be kept in his death row cell that whole time. And he was left there for 10 years until the ruling was finally overturned. And for 30 years, he wasn't able to touch his loved ones, anybody. And so what happened was, he got transferred off of death row, I believe it was in December, and they put him in the hole in even more punitive conditions. So supporters launched a campaign. People from around the world demanded that he be moved from there and finally be put in the general population so that he could be able to touch his family again and visitors. And after a few months, we won. It was an amazing victory. What we need to do is take the inspiration that we've gotten from this beautiful victory and take that to motivate us to now fight to get him released from prison as soon as we can. And currently his lawyers, who are the NAACP Legal Defense Fund, and then Judith Ritter, a professor at Widener University, they're looking for ways to do this. This is a newspaper that journalists from UMIA publishes, and we have detailed extensively the evidence of innocence. We lay out diagrams of the crime scene and show you the new crime scene photos to show you the many different levels at which the conviction against him is a total fraud.
We started a lawsuit for Geronimo saying that he was illegally confined in the lockup in solitary confinement because of his political beliefs. That was the only little wrinkle we had that we could attack the prison as to where they put people, because every warrior we met with said, well, the prison can put people where they want. You know, that's their job. And we found that they couldn't put them where they wanted if it was for political reasons. It would seem so overwhelming because we were suing the entire prison system in San Quentin and in Sacramento. And they wouldn't let us visit, and they were always interfering with what we were doing. But finally, we got in front of a federal judge, and they let us, we won the motion to go to trial. And all we could do was try to prove that he was locked up for political beliefs, and the prison had all these other things why they locked him up, the bad things he did, you know, the 115s, all these things. And we had one of the most conservative judges in the country, Sam Conti, doing this trial, but he somehow realized something was wrong and let us try the case. And Geronimo was such an incredible witness. we were able to defeat the prison system, and a jury in San Francisco found that he was illegally confined for political beliefs against the prison system.
I kind of look at all these pictures, and you know, any one of them could have been used or utilized to highlight abuse of civil rights, you know. These pictures and more. Amnesty International chose Angola 3 because there's double whammy with Angola 3. Not only has Herman and Alvin, you know, remained in solitary confinement for 40 years, but all of the evidence that convicted them has been undermined. Our case has been recommended to be overturned twice. Herman's case, actually our case has been overturned twice. Herman's case has been recommended to be overturned. And all of the evidence in both cases are shot. Nevertheless, they still remain in solitary confinement. You don't get dipped in waste and not come up standing. It's impossible. Show me anybody get dipped in, excuse the expression, poo-poo, and not come up smelling. I was in prison for 31 years in solitary confinement, 23, sometimes 24 hours a day. And just because, you know, people say, well, ask me, well, why aren't you crazy? I tell them quick, hold up, I didn't tell you I wasn't crazy. I did not tell you I wasn't crazy. Or say I'm not crazy. I became politicized, being a member of the Black Panther Party, and it was because of that becoming politicized and having an ideology and bringing that and trying to do what I can to practice that while in solitary confinement. I think it helped me, you know, stay afloat. Because we have the wind at our back, we have to be persistent. You know, we have to, in other words, we have to raise the bar for everybody. In other words, of course, you know, Angola 3, Herman and Alvin been in solitary confinement for 40 years and counting. But 40 days is equivalent to, for some people, to 40 years. 24 hours is considered equivalent to 1 day, tantamount to 1 day. You know, so it's not an idea of how long you're there. The idea is we have to get rid of solitary confinement, period. We have to look at make a distinction between, you know, that which is legal and that which is moral. You know, again, we always say it was legal to own slaves. You know, it was legal. It wasn't until people saw it as being morally reprehensible that it took a different turn.
Hugo L.A. Pinel, Yogi Bear. I've been writing to him in communication with him consistently for the last 22 years. He's been in Pelican Bay SHU, where I visited him 4 times. He has now been in solitary confinement for at least 42 years and been in prison since he was 19. He's 67 now, and that's 48 years, okay? So this is just unconscionable. There's no words to describe this kind of torture. This kind of vengefulness that the state is imposing on one Hugo Pinel. His mother is in her 80s, and she travels all the way from San Francisco up to Pelican Bay on a regular basis to beat him, to see her son through a plexiglass and talk to him on the phone. And no contact, no phone calls, nothing. Yogi has been eligible for parole since 1985. He has not had a write-up since 1982. Yogi's parole board hearing has been postponed. I just found that out today from Uncommon Law, the Uncommon Law offices of Keith Watley, who is going to take on his case. And he said that it's been postponed a year, and they worked on getting it postponed because of the new gang validation policies that are coming up, that they think that they can take advantage of and possibly get him some relief. He is their trophy for August 21st, 1971. When George Jackson, in what we believe was a setup, was assassinated on the yard, 3 notoriously racist guards and 2 inmate turnkeys were also killed. 6 brothers were put on trial. When I first saw 6 brothers in the Marin County Courthouse, all very handsome, I was very young, and wearing 30 pounds of chains around their neck, down their back, through their crotch, handcuffed, leg on chains, shuffling because their feet were chained, their ankles were chained. So they had to shuffle into the courtroom. And it was just an incredible sight, reminiscent of the auction block. Settle your quarrels, come together, understand the reality of our situation. Understand that fascism is already here, that people are dying who could be saved. Others will live poor, butchered half-lives if you fail to act. Do what must be done. Discover your humanity and your love in revolution.
This is not a poem. It's not for a book. It's words that come on their own to me. What I say now is for the unquieted and restless spirits inside prison, from ACSQ. There's a whisper going around that I died. Was no whisper. Where was I? Where was I? Screaming and fighting, what a way to die. Once prisons had colors, now all is gray. I saw you, I said, saw you again. The gunman knew the squad wanted him to shoot, do his job, prove up. Boom! He shot you dead, he said. This, the age of EOP, prison opportunity employment, and this black pig shot a brown wild kid to protect a white dude coming at him with a real knife and to prove up. And guess who lived? Nobody knew what would happen, but everybody knew. Going out to the cage yard for exercise, strip search, and all that, then boom! Got you dead, they said. Shot you fucking dead, you died! I think his name was Chuy. He went like this the last time I seen him go by. La mano. Thought he died, but he still lives, thinks he's alive, pobrecito. You got there, they said, lay down, and go rest, and go free. A minute of silence. Whatever.